If you're looking for a clean, sober, professional, academic,
well-researched, historically accurate, generally accurate, serious podcast
on Southern folklore, ghosts, bizarre events, and unique people,
this podcast is not for you.
However, if you've decided you can live with that,
then join us for The Strange South.
You know, I used to always have this idea that one day I was going to be in a flash mob for Thriller.
When did this idea start?
I don't know. I think someone actually did it. I think it's a pretty common thing. I think. Hi, Patrice.
Hi, Marleah.
Hi, Courtney.
Hi, y'all.
We're having a hard time, not just gulping down what we're drinking.
And I'm
Okay,
trying very hard because I need a sippy cup and I have a...
She has a martini glass yet again.
Yet again.
She's not happy about it.
Don't make her laugh, because she already said as soon as you gave it to her, you walked away, and she's like, "I'm gonna spill that down my front."
Mm-hmm.
I had
and
to.
It's got milk stuff in it.
No, it's not you. It's me. It's totally me. And the problem is, it's from the drinking part I can handle, but it's like going from my mouth to a surface. It's where the danger lies.
So it's sitting it back down.
Setting it back down.
You can actually you can hit the target when you take a drink. You can actually
yeah. I mean, if it's going
glass
in my
to mouth
mouth,
is
it's
done.
yeah. Not
Should
a
we
problem.
put? Okay, so we need to put like a Rocky Horror mouth or something on a coaster,
Yes.
and then you can put it. But then if you did that, you'd just tip it sideways and feed it to it.
Right, exactly. And then I'd have to lick it off the table because it's so good.
It's pretty good.
Yeah,
Tell us about it
It's
now that
sweet
you've written
for
it
me.
down.
Yeah. I
Is it
haven't
too
finished.
sweet for you?
Well,
I'll
not
finish it
too
for
sweet,
you.
but so I was trying to decide what to do with the infused apple cinnamon vodka we have from the
Besides
live
just
show.
drink it,
Yeah,
because
but
I
drink it
literally
straight.
would have just
and I
kept
gave some to
on.
Rusty and Renee, and shoot, I should name it this, but I don't want this to be this name. So anyway, they had it too. They came to the live show, and I gave them a little sample of it, and they just chilled it straight into a martini glass and called it a Courtney.
The guy, yes.
Oh, I never thought of that before.
Yes.
The Courtney. He said he also threw out $5.75.
Oh,
Instead of a
nice.
French
Instead of a
75.
French 75.
Put some champagne in it.
I was going to say, you've got to have some champagne with that. But you know what? I could dig that. I could totally dig that.
That's what we had. We put that. I made the Bellinis for the show that had champagne. So that's what we drank with it the first time.
I need some more of that.
Yeah, it was good.
We need to make some. I need to buy like a gallon of.
This is kind of the
vodka.
opposite. So that was going with the fruitiness and crisp and bubbly. And so I decided to take a turn and do, which I'm not a big fan of creamy martinis either. Don't do chocolatinis or whatever the coffee ones or any espresso martinis. But I decided to do this apple pie kind of version. So I just looked up a bunch of different recipes that were kind of creamy martinis. And I had some Irish cream in my coffee this morning and got inspiration.
Nice.
So I was like, how about the apple cinnamon vodka with a little bit of, I have Carolyn's, but Bailey's, whatever Irish cream you like. And then I decided it needed a little bit of plain vodka because I don't like it too sweet, and a dash of heavy cream. So that's what's in it. And then one recipe I saw, which I did still, had crushed graham crackers with caramel as the binding agent. So these are
on the rim.
Yeah, rimmed with caramel, crushed graham crackers, and then caramel drizzle in the glass. So it's a caramel apple pie.
It's really good.
It's so good.
Apple cinnamon pie.
I'm halfway done. Usually you see these that are so pretty and have all the, and if you smell it and it may smell spectacular, but then when you taste it, it tastes more liquory than you're smelling. This one's not that way.
No.
This one's
it's got a
danger zone.
really good
drink.
balance.
Yeah, it's very, very mellow.
Thank you. Hold on. Pause 1 second.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Did you leave the oven on?
Nope.
I am not going to eat that.
You need to stop talking right now.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
So, all right, I'm back.
Are we recording again?
Yeah, I never paused.
All right.
Randy's in charge of pausing.
So I had to run to the pod kitchen, the martini making station, and get the apples that made this lovely vodka. So I have in my hand a quart mason jar full of apple slices with cinnamon sticks from where I infused this for about however many days, 5 days. And then after I decided to keep these because Patrice and Marleah came over before the live show and were like, save these apples so that we can make something with like maybe ice cream. And I'm going to have Patrice try one right now. I've already tried one, and so is Marleah.
So is Marleah, and I can tell by Marleah's face.
Because Marleah gave it away.
My face is
smells
blank.
great.
If you wanted me to not tell things, you should have told me in advance.
It's not dangerous. It smells really good, doesn't it?
It does smell
It
good.
smells like
good.
apple cinnamon
Okay,
with a
so
little bit of vodka.
here's the first bite.
Go ahead. First bite. First second is kind of...
Oh, what happened?
I know. Oh my God. The same thing happens to everybody. Why did you do this to her?
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I've already had Renee try it too. And Marleah.
So
And
I
I'm trying
found
to get-
this out. Was I the first? Because I pulled them out of the fridge
pulled
one
them.
night after class, and I was like, "Oh, I've been wanting to try these," and I
Patrice-
tried one.
Tell us what it was to you first before she tells us.
Please do.
That
The first bite was...
so it was like crunchy and it was still firm, but then it turned into like turpentine.
Yes,
Straight up
exactly.
ethanol.
Oh my god!
sorry.
And like my tongue is burning.
I know. I
You
told her.
didn't swallow the bite, did you?
No.
I thought I was just such a pussy. Like when I took a
She
bite
was
out
in
of
my
the
house
end
like,
of it,
oh, I'm going to get these out. These are really drunk. These are going to be great.
and
You
then
need
I
to go
took
reach
a
your mouth
bite.
out. I'm sorry. I'm so bad.
It was so mean.
Y'all going to make me eat beets and jello, so it's on now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like...
So listen,
on.
y'all's listen now.
Listen,
We've
now.
done some research into this whole Jello taste kitchen thing.
yes.
And Patrice has already started our first Jello taste kitchen Jello. Tell us about it, Patrice.
So, hopefully the video will be up by the time this.
Are we doing it today?
No,
We don't think she looks terrified.
she did look terrified.
That's why I went ahead. I got to
No.
play offense here.
No,
So
I
I don't. For the apples. Don't fuck with me, people.
You make me taste that. I'm gonna make you like
Yeah. Well,
eat
when you-
gasoline.
When she tasted it, she thought she was a wuss, and then she said, "Here, come try it."
I'm-
And she
yeah, I
thought I was
made-
gonna like it, and I did the same thing.
I made
took-
Courtney try it.
So
I
in
felt like there were fumes like shooting out my
no,
nose.
no, it's like I think I lost like about 3 layers to my
I know.
tongue.
I know.
Oh,
It's like
no.
all the hairs inside your
Yeah.
sinuses have just.
Well,
that was
fair play. We all
disintegrated.
had a shock. It wasn't just you. It wasn't just a joke played on you, Patrice,
Oh,
because I was
that's
just as
fine.
shocked as you were. And I did it to Renee yesterday at tailgate.
and I tried to do it to Randy, but
And we tried to do it to Chad. Chad was like, I just saw she spit that in the trash. I'm not about
Yeah.
to eat that.
no, and Courtney's trying to pregame against us with this because she's never been in favor of this Jello test kitchen idea.
Yes.
So go ahead now. Sorry.
Okay, so the our first Jello test kitchen recipe is a beet mold.
I hate beets. There's not a
I'm
lot
not
of it.
I'm not a
Vegetables, I hate
I'm not a
beets.
big fan of beets either. It tastes like dirt.
I'm
I
a
hate
pretty,
beets,
I'm a pretty
and I
huge
hate
fan
celery.
of beets.
And the
I love
pictures
beets.
you sent had both in it.
Yes. So anyway, it was an ordeal. There was beets, there was onions, there was horseradish.
Okay.
There's
That's why you wanted a roast beef sandwich.
That's why I wanted a
Yeah,
roast beef
'cause of the
sandwich.
horseradish.
Mm-hmm.
Bloody Mary one.
There's celery, there's vinegar, there's sugar, a little bit of sugar, a little bit of salt. So all of this is being congealed as we speak, and
Dirty word.
congealed. And we will do a video of us sampling
Oh my god.
our first
I'm scared. I'm
Jell-O.
really scared.
If we
Mold.
enjoy this, our friend Karen had recommended yesterday that we do like a taste test competition where multiple people have to taste everything.
Let's just go randomly find people on the street and be like, excuse me, ma'am, sir.
Would you put this in your mouth?
Would you like to try
Would
some
you
of our
please
Jell-O?
put this in your mouth? I mean,
It's
hell.
gonna be really gross, but
No, we'd
don't know
have
me.
cops swarming us in
Oh,
2
yeah.
seconds in this town, and it would take us 20 minutes to find a person on the street.
I have freshmen I could sample it on. I could just bring it to my class. You could too, Patrice. Just take it to class and be like, I brought you a treat.
Okay, I'll give you 5 bonus points.
Here, sign this waiver of liability.
Just be like, it's your Halloween. It's a trick or treat.
This is the last thing we did before everyone lost their job.
Nah, that's fine. I'll go out like that. I teach on Halloween, actual Halloween. I can be like, look, it's up to you, trick
yeah.
or treat.
Wow.
And then I can like have it like you just open it. You got like the Pepsi challenge or whatever. You keep it covered. Pick which one. Up.
That's
gotta
what
eat the
you
Jell-O.
get.
Oh, you get a candy apple.
Oh my god, that's so mean. Oh, you're gonna end up with riots on your hands in that case.
My students would just tell me no.
Oh my goodness.
Well, good times. So hopefully
times.
that's coming around the corner for us sometime soon. We'll find a time
Oh,
when
most
we can
definitely,
get together.
like-
Because it can't sit in your fridge.
Like tomorrow?
interminably.
Are we doing this tomorrow?
I'm thinking tomorrow it'll be ready.
I'm leaving it up to y'all with scheduling.
Like it'll
and
probably
stuff.
be ready by the time we finish this podcast. But I told Marleah since we're drinking tonight that it's probably, and
especially a creamy martini. I'm not following that with beets and horseradish.
Gross, man.
I mean, you'll never get that
I
out
don't
of your
ever
rack.
want to. I don't want to follow anything with beets and celery.
Oh Lord. Well, all right.
Good
wish
times.
us luck. Godspeed.
Godspeed. If you don't hear from us again, it's because it was death
Because
by
we're all
beats.
dead. Well, let's see. So, I guess pre-show we should let you know that we're doing things differently.
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Like, oh hey, by the way,
FYI.
FYI, we have decided that for a multitude of reasons, we are going to start changing the format of this show a little bit, at least temporarily. We're going to see how this works, and do one story an episode instead of 2.
Right.
This kind of will make the episodes a little bit shorter, but we'll be able to give you more of them. And
Right.
we'll probably be able to record more of them, hopefully, because, we won't be doing 4-hour recording sessions, which sometimes is what happens.
It was getting dangerously long.
Because we spend a lot of time shooting the shit, like
do.
not even on the, you hear
Right.
the leftovers.
Right.
But
I guess I'm making drinks for every show, though, right? Y'all are halving your duties. Is that what I'm hearing?
Duties. Do you need a
I'm
raise?
sorry. But what I've decided, since we're going to this new format, is only 2/3 of the podcast get a drink every time. So that would be me and whoever's
right.
doing the story
All
that
right,
week.
I got
Wait,
you.
I gave Patrice one today already.
Yeah, because
Sorry.
I'm doing a
Give me
story
that drink.
today.
Give me that drink back. I'm just kidding. I'll still make a drink every week. I told them they're always trying to help me when I'm in here, and I'm like, you all, this is my only prep. You spend hours researching and writing and watching movies and listening to podcasts. I just Googled a bunch of recipes and figured out what I had in the cabinet and came over here and started crushing graham crackers. That was
And
my
here
only
we
job.
end up with this masterpiece.
Master that
Mwah.
I've just finished.
See?
Sorry.
Bellissimo.
Dude, so good.
Do you want more Strange South every week? We can help. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and you can join our Facebook fan group, Fans of the Strange South Podcast, to keep the chat going with our whole creepy community. Do you have a story idea for us or a story of your own to share? Email us at stories@thestrangesouth.com. Plus, if you join our Patreon, you not only help support the podcast, you get an exclusive bonus episode for every show and a discount on merch. You can find links to all of these things on our website, thestrangesouth.com, along with photos, links, and show notes from every episode, Strange South t-shirts, mugs, and other goodies. See you there.
I don't even know how I'm starting. I didn't actually even how am I going to start this? I just wrote a word on the top.
What does it say?
What is the word?
Let's start at the very beginning.
That's what it says?
No, it's not. It says born 1825 is what it says.
Oh.
You know what? That's how most
That's
of
the
mine
beginning of a
start.
story. So
1825.
1825.
Okay.
This actually comes from it's folklore, not exactly folklore. It's folklore history from an area that Courtney's really familiar with, and you're gonna laugh because I did figure out where this person is actually from, and you're gonna laugh your ass off about it.
I can't wait because she came to me and said something about I'm going to talk about Sand Mountain. And I was
said,
okay.
I walked up to Courtney and Chad yesterday at tailgate, and I said, "Have you ever heard of Granny Dollar?" And they were both like, "No." And I was like, forget I said anything. Because I was kind of thinking like, well, they could kind of add to some of the stuff that I had been looking up, but they don't know about it. So it was local folklore probably up until the 1960s. And then the story kind of faded away a little bit. And sometimes it kind of comes back up again. It's not raucous. It's not like scary or terrifying or anything, but I don't know. I just really liked it. So I accidentally came across it.
That's kind of weird. Where'd you find it?
There was some Facebook post from, it's one of those things that comes across as a recommended post, and it's not even something that you follow.
Right.
And it linked to an older article about her. And so I clicked on that and I was like, well, okay.
I just text my mom
to find out if she knows. Well, maybe we'll find out more soon.
I know.
So
it'll be in paragraph form.
So the reason, so it's Granny Dollar is the person that we're talking about. That's not her original name, but there was a while where like kids around the Sand Mountain, Alabama area, close to where she was, which I mean, Courtney actually had to show me on a map like what Sand Mountain is. So if you're in Alabama, if you're familiar at all with the Lookout Mountain Range, and that goes from Alabama up through Tennessee, it's a very, very long mountain range. And if you've ever been to Ruby Falls or any of that around Chattanooga, that's part of the Lookout Mountain Range. And and so Sand Mountain is kind of parallel to that for a short while when you're up in North Alabama near Fort Payne and Scottsboro. And so there are little sections of that where people might have recognized her name for a little while. And some kids probably thought that they were talking about the fortune-telling witch up on the mountain. And but not it was definitely like a kids haha run away kind of witch story, not a like grown-ups with pitchforks kind of witch story.
Oh, okay.
So where all of this would have started, born 1825, there was a Cherokee girl named Nancy Callahan, and her dad's name was William. He was a full Cherokee, and he was a giant of a man. He was 6'5", he's 300 pounds. Wow. He commanded a presence and turned heads, apparently. And her mom was named Mary Sexton. She was a half Cherokee, half Irish woman. And they had a small hut in Buck's Pocket.
Oh my
on Sand Mountain. And I was trying to tell Courtney this morning that it was a Sand Mountain story, but I couldn't remember exactly where it was from. And then I started rereading stuff to put it all down on paper today, and I saw Buck's Pocket, and I was like, well, fuck. Courtney got married in Buck's Pocket.
I got married in Buck's Pocket.
Oh my God.
I spent a lot of teenage times in Buck's Pocket at night, driving around, doing legal things.
Sure, doing perfectly legal things.
Most of my teenage years were spent in Buck's Pocket.
And and Buck's Pocket now is a state park?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just
spilled on herself.
It's all right.
It's because I got her very excited.
Continue. Yes, I do know where Buck's Pocket is.
So, yes. So the hut that they had was in Buck's Pocket on Sand Mountain, Alabama. And during this time, like in 1825, the Cherokee were among, in the U.S., what was called the 5 civilized tribes. Mm-hmm. So it was Cherokee, Chickasaw, Choctaw, Muskogee, and Seminole. And these are all deep South tribes. So it's, Seminole, we always associate with Florida a lot. It's South Carolina, Tennessee, mostly Alabama, Georgia, and Florida are the most, I think.
North Carolina.
And North Carolina is Cherokee too.
Yes.
So so those are the areas where these tribal nations had most of their land. And and the reason that the U.S. had started calling them civilized tribes is because from the time of the U.S. resolution, from the time of the Revolutionary War, there have been like arguments about like what we're going to do with the Indians. Like, right. What are we going to do with these people? And George Washington, like from all the way back in George Washington, he was the one that was kind of a proponent of the let's assimilate everybody. Like we're going to civilize these people. We don't. Now, to their credit, it was if we're looking at a black and white argument, he's talking, are we going to assimilate them or are we going to eradicate them?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
or remove them.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, George Washington was in favor of assimilation, and there were incentives that were provided to people who kind of, you know, we all know some of those went wrong, who would send their children to Christian schools or whatever, which often, I don't even need to get into that, but there are a lot of things about the way that you know, First Nations people were treated in Christian boarding schools. But the idea was, let's let them be like us so they can dress like us and they can learn our language and they can learn our religion. And that way we don't have to kill them and everybody lives happily ever after. So, you know, best laid intentions. I'm sure it was
Civilized too, because we hadn't even moved across the West.
Yeah.
I mean, that was where we were.
That was it.
We were
That was
here.
everything.
I mean, we as white people. I mean.
White people. That was everything. And a lot of the tribes responded to this desire to assimilate them with no, what the fuck? Like, no, let's not though. And the 5 civilized tribes, quote unquote, tended towards assimilation. And there were a lot of motivations for them to do that. It's not a simple decision, and it's also not a wholesale decision, because there are people in every tribe that didn't do it the same way. So there's a large extent and variety of the way that people dealt with that between tribes. But they called them civilized tribes because some of them did not behave like savages anymore. You know, so the Cherokee people, especially of Nancy's people in this area, they were in the civilized tribe. And so Nancy has 2 younger brothers. She's got John and Seth are her younger brothers. None of them went to school. She ran around barefoot all day, never wore shoes, watched over her brothers. I was like, well,
Sounds
it's
about
like
right.
everybody
I
ran
did
around
that.
barefoot, never wore shoes,
did
watched
that in
over their younger siblings and
Butt's
cousins.
pocket too.
Played games. They were like several huts kind of in their area, and they would play games in the common area with the other kids who were close to their age. And she was a very responsible child and was raised to be responsible for her siblings. So she would do chores. She would keep the children in line, the other kids, and they farmed at this property, and they sharecropped the farm. They didn't own it. Her mother cooked game. Her father hunted big game. She had a big red clay oven out behind the house. They didn't have an oven, like, of course, it wasn't like a cabin. So they had like just a kind of a lean-to outside the house that didn't have walls. And there was a big red clay oven outside where everything would get cooked, and you could cook a whole dinner at a time inside this big red clay oven. And I just thought about, like, she talked a lot in this. It was a book that I read called Granny Dollar that was based on firsthand accounts from her in interviews that she had done with people about her life. So she talked a lot about how she felt about her childhood in these conversations, and it just sounded idyllic, you know?
Right.
Like she would lay in the grass. And I mean, you could almost just smell you could almost just smell the place.
The
Yeah, the
rain.
clay and everything. And
The honeysuckle.
it just sounded, like something. So when she was 8, her dad comes home from a hunt, and he would go off to these long hunts for a long time. And they weren't just hunts. She figured this out later. But, you know,
Little bow, chicka, bow, bow.
yeah, right. I told you he turned heads. But,
6'5".
he comes home from this long hunt, and they have kind of a system whenever he gets home. If he comes home with game, the whole family kind of goes into work mode, and everybody has a job, and they do it immediately, because you don't have a fridge or anything like that. You've got to preserve this right now, and you've got to cook it right now and deal with it, jerky it, whatever you're going to do. And so they made a dinner out of it after they'd done all this work, and he sits down, and he just, everybody's eating, and he just won't eat. And Mary looks at him and asks him why. And he says, I can't eat when my other wife and children don't have any food.
Oh, Lord.
So he has a wife in South Carolina and 3 kids there. And Nancy's mom, Mary, is like, well, then you should probably bring them here, because we have a lot of food. And so he starts eating, and everybody's ravenous, and everybody gets all excited, and they're going to go, and he's going to go the next day and go get this family. So he does. He leaves, and
She could probably use the help.
yeah, for real. And during this, and it's not unusual for Cherokee men to take more than one wife.
Right.
So there are other people in their village that have multiple wives. It's not something that's looked down upon. It's not slighted. It's not like a threat to anybody. It's just a way of life. So he goes to South Carolina to get them. And while he's gone, just like when he goes on these long hunting trips, Nancy's in charge of everything. She sets out rabbit traps. She manages the harvest of the crops. She fishes. She takes care of everything.
She was half Cherokee and half Irish.
Well, her mom was half Irish, half Cherokee. So Nancy is...
And her dad was full Cherokee?
Full Cherokee, yeah. So Nancy is 3/4.
Yes,
then.
okay.
So William had taught her also, he taught her how to tend his moonshine still when she was 10. So he took her through the woods to find because it's in a secret place, because they're always in a secret place. And he told her how to watch the gauge and make sure that the line stayed right between these two numbers. And if it goes above these numbers, here's what you do. So from the time she's 10, she knows how to tend the still. And, so she's keeping up with that. Mary gets the hut clean, makes a new sleeping place for all these. And one day William finally gets back from South Carolina with a wagon full of people. So mother number 2 is Casey. The kids, there's 3 kids. They're all younger than Nancy. So this isn't like a wife he had before he got married. This is like a wife he had from recently.
Right.
But now they've got, they've gone from a family of 5 to a family of 9, and all the kids are under 6 except for her. So... So, everybody's very happy. They all hug, they go out to play, they introduce them to everybody in the neighborhood. And she's the big sister. She watches over everything. And the family just keeps growing faster because both mamas are still having babies.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah.
And by the time Nancy is 12, she's the midwife of the village because she has delivered so many babies from both of her mothers that she knows the herbs. She knows what to do. She knows what looks right and what doesn't look right.
Nancy do the still as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's who was helping with the still when she was
Damn.
10, Nancy.
Yeah.
She's the daughter.
The little girl.
So she's like moonshiner / midwife.
She can do anything.
Badass.
Like, for real. I'm like,
Yes.
that's kind of why I was like, oh, this is kind of extraordinary person, right? This isn't just the way everybody was. So, so she's 12 years old, and all the people in the village will call her when they have a pregnant person in the house because she knows more than anybody else. And she helps them all through labor. She's delivered brothers and sisters. So in 4 years, they're a family with 12 children, including a set of triplets.
Jesus Christ.
And 3 adults in this one hut. I mean, and she sleeps outside on the ground just so she can get away from everybody and look up at stars at night. Like, she just doesn't, she doesn't want to be in all that.
Yeah, no joke.
So, but during this time when she's like growing up and getting to this age, all this other stuff is happening in the nation. So Major General Andrew Jackson, who was originally born
this is
in
around
South
1837
Carolina.
now. If she's 12, right?
She's 12. It's pretty close to there. So, and he, of course, Andrew Jackson ended up in Tennessee outside of Nashville, has been like, in this time, he's been basically warring with all the Creeks to win space for baby white America everywhere. Because, his intention is to oust Native people so that he can hand it over, because cotton is supposed to be a lucrative crop and you need a lot of space to grow cotton. And here's where we can grow cotton, but all these Native people live here, so they got to go. And white settlers start flooding into this area to take advantage of the lands that aren't theirs. And they would just go in and burn tribal homesteads, or they murdered people.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, not everybody did this, but some people did. And state government.
About my family?
What's that?
I'm just kidding.
What are you saying about my family?
All these years, we'll go to that later with ancestry. I thought I had Cherokee till, anyway.
You weren't right. Oh, yeah. Well, we'll talk about that later.
Just a bunch of white people. Just a bunch of
Same.
Scottish and Irish people.
Same. So white.
Scottish and Irish and English.
Well, it's interesting. So, but so with this though, state governments would support white people who were ousting Native people from their land. And so when Nancy, of course, Andrew Jackson became president when Nancy was only 3 years old in 1830, and he's like, "Yep, we're gonna move him out." What's wrong? Do we need to pause? I kill you.
Don't tell Randy what we're seeing.
I killed him many times.
I kill you.
That's what I say every time at home. It's just what I say naturally. It makes it easier to stomp. I kill you.
I kill you.
I think it's dead.
Okay.
Okay. I don't know if you needed to pause that or not. It's kind of entertaining, I think. Anyway, so.
That was Mom calling me. I was like, we're recording now. So hold.
Oh, she was calling you? She might know something.
Yeah.
Or she might just.
I'll call her after.
Yeah. So, okay. Andrew Jackson becomes president in 1830, immediately signs the Indian Removal Act.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, there's 125,000 Native Americans in the Deep South, millions of acres of tribal land. And by 1900, there's very few. The Indian Removal Act said, and this was a federal thing, but said that in exchange for their lands in the South, the government would let the native tribes stay in quote unquote Indian territory, which is Oklahoma, before it was Oklahoma. Like it wasn't Oklahoma then. They got it in the Louisiana Purchase, and it was like, hey, we just got this. Y'all go over there. You could just have this one. And it was supposed to be voluntary.
Never mind
at
that it
first.
looks nothing like where you're from.
No,
and has
it's
nothing.
nothing.
Different
It's a lot
climate
colder.
and
And
yeah.
you guys would all be really pissed if we all said, hey, you'll be fine over there, you know. But so it was supposed to be voluntary, that like treaties were supposed to be negotiated, and it was supposed to be more of like a win-win for people, though I don't think it was ever great.
They were like voluntold,
Exactly.
as we say in faculty.
And nobody was
Yeah,
supposed
exactly.
to. Yeah, right.
voluntold.
And so nobody was supposed to be forced, but we all know that that's not how that happened. There was a Supreme Court decision in 1832 saying that Native nations were sovereign nations and that state laws couldn't be used against Native nations, and the states gave no fucks. And Andrew Jackson gave no fucks.
Oh yeah.
So it didn't, like, the Supreme Court. Andrew Jackson was literally just like about so many things, was just like, yeah, I don't care though.
Yep.
Right.
He reminds us of someone. He's just like, wait a minute, all of your like structures mean nothing to me. So anyway, the government started this with the Choctaw. In 1831, the U.S. Army was starting to say, okay, we've given you like maybe a year to get used to this idea and volunteer. It's time to go now. And whole nation of the Choctaws marched into Indian territory on foot, sometimes chained, and the government gave them no food, no shoes, no resources, no medicine, no assistance.
Nope.
So it's like goes from government saying like, hey, we would like you to maybe consider going over here, to government like showing up with bayonets and saying it's time now, and it's going to be 1,200 miles, so you best get ready. So that's why the march was called the Trail of Tears.
And I mean, I'm sure that there was already other Native people there in that land that they were going to. I mean, I don't know my Native American history, which is really sad, but I'm sure, like, you know, the Trail of Tears. But like Oklahoma is not devoid of other people.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like all these people now are be like, well,
And it's
who
also
are
like
you?
such a lark to think they're saying like, oh yeah, we're going to give you this, except, you know, it wasn't that long before they decided that
Oh, we
was
need that too.
Oklahoma, and we
Yeah.
also would like that, please. And Indian territory gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and then
no
it just
please
doesn't
in there.
exist.
No.
So but you know, this particular time, I mean, it was a short span of years when that many people died. I mean, it really was like a genocide.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
I mean, thousands
Well, you would have
of
to
people.
think. I mean, if
it was a
somebody
death
came
march.
here, yeah, and it was like, "Hey, you're going to have to move, and we're going to take your house now," I'd be like, "Fuck you," and you know, come at me.
Yeah.
So I'm,
You're going anyway without
me, bro.
shoes. And you're going
Right.
to walk to Oklahoma.
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, and sometimes, like in the case of the Cherokee, the chief, John Ross, was the chief of the Cherokee at the time, and he said, we would like you to voluntarily do this. You know, this is going to be better for us. We have decided as a nation that this is what we're going to do. And that doesn't mean everybody wanted to do it. And
Right.
we'll learn that. So, and
Well, I'm sure they were also like, they're going to just murder us all if we don't.
yeah.
right.
Like,
I
this
mean,
is our
well,
only
either way,
option.
somebody shows up at your house with bayonets and like bugles and rifles. I mean, what do you... So 1836, the government moves on, goes to the Creeks. So at least 1/5 of the Creek population dies in the Trail of Tears. And the last group they crack down on is the Cherokee. So Nancy's family begins to hear the rumblings about the Choctaw and the Creek. And then one night, she's off to a neighbor's house, Elizabeth, because Elizabeth is pregnant. And she's checking to make sure, you know, are you ready to have the baby, dilation, all that kind of stuff. And she's not. She's checking. She's like comforting them. And then she's on her way back, and there's like kind of a strange energy in every hut she passes by. She gets home, and John and William and her moms are beginning to like shuffle stuff around and pack things up. And they said John Ross has said that we should voluntarily, the government is coming, and John Ross has said that we should voluntarily go. And William says, we ain't going. Like, we're not going anywhere. Gather up everything you can carry, we're going to the Saltpeter Cave, and we're going to be there until this is done. And I think that's somewhere on the west side of Sand Mountain. I'm not sure what the Saltpeter Cave
I'll have
meant.
to look that up.
So they loosed their dogs, they loosed their horses, and they grabbed everything that they could walk with. And in 30 minutes, they're ready to leave. But Nancy, this 12-year-old kid, says, I can't. There's this lady next door, and she's going to have a baby. And if I don't stay, she's going to like have complications. Like something bad's going to happen. So I can't go with you. So Dad says, okay, you know where this cave is? Here's some rudimentary instructions. Go with Elizabeth. Come find us when you're done. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, this is 12-year-old.
It was a different time.
For real. But this, I think, is also a different person.
Right.
Like, she sounds like a remarkable person, I'm telling you. So
Right.
Nancy goes to the neighbors to sleep that night. It's like the next morning they wake up and there's bugles and gunfire outside. And they're all marched at bayonet point out of the village. And of course, as they go, the group gets larger because they're picking up more villages of people. And they all get thrown into the fort. And they said at Willstown. So I looked this up. I was like, I don't know Willstown. That was a Cherokee trading town that was named after a local chief. And that's Fort Payne.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
So Fort Payne was the Army's fort that was built specifically to inter Cherokee people who were on the Trail of Tears so that they could kind of collect them all up before they started on the next road of the journey. So Fort Payne was there for this.
So it was like
built
a stop
for this.
of the Trail of Tears.
Yeah, which I didn't know that.
I didn't either.
Me either.
I didn't know that.
So they were, and it was basically, I mean, they were in cages. I mean, it was basically a prison. So they were fed like dirty water and, mushy food. And if there were people who were defiant, they just had dug like a hole underneath the building, and they would just put these people in a hole and feed them through like a crack. It was not good. So after a week in there, and there were some people in there who had already been there for a month. But after a week, Nancy's group was all put back on the march, and the neighbor still has not had the baby. And Nancy's just like, okay, I'd really like to go home now. And like I said, it's supposed to be a 1,200-mile journey. They heard the soldiers saying it's going to take 80 days to get there. So they're walking these people 15 miles a day. Like,
Jesus.
I can't even imagine. And I mean, it's people of all ages, and
Right.
it's just crazy. So after 5 hours back on the road, once they get out of the Fort Payne, the neighbor lady starts to groan, and Nancy's like, okay, here we go. This is time. So she takes her off the trail and she lays down, and all these other women just kind of gather around and provide a screen. And Nancy, and it's a pretty quick labor, and Nancy delivers the baby, and they just tie him to Elizabeth's back and they keep on walking. And Nancy's like, okay, I did what I said I was going to do. She somehow manages to slink off. I guess she's small. And so she,
Also, I mean, wilderness, no GPS.
Yeah.
I mean, I imagine it'd be
with that
pretty
many people,
easy
yeah,
to just
somebody
kinda
could
like,
get away.
Yeah, get away. No, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So she gets back out, she sneaks away, and she heads for the cave. And it was pretty common for the people who stayed behind in Alabama and Georgia and Tennessee to hide out in these cave systems.
Right.
We talked about the cave systems all the time. So other families would kind of help her as she makes her way back to where she's supposed to be. People will just give you little, trinkets or water or a little bit of food or whatever you might need. And finally, she finds the place where they're staying, and they kind of settle in. And they made little reconnaissance trips back to their hut, to the point where they had gotten almost everything they owned and moved it into this cave. And they lived there for 3 years
Wow.
in a cave. A family that by this time there are 18 children
Holy shit.
and 3 adults, including
Oh my
2
God.
sets of triplets now.
Oh my God. Y'all learned some,
2 sets of triplets.
Two
some
sets now.
birth control herbs.
I know,
please.
for real. We have a show on that. Just go ahead and shoot back to that. Yeah, this kid she's bitten by snakes. She's attacked by a mountain lion.
Oh my God.
How far had she walked?
She can do anything. I actually don't know. I don't know
Okay.
the answer to that. And then one day her dad comes back after these 3 years in this cave from this long hunting trip and says, they just decided it's over. The government isn't looking for us anymore. They've finished this whole, relocation thing, and we can go back home.
I think that cave is in like Scottsboro area, Jackson County, which Buck's
That
Pocket
makes sense.
is both. It's at both areas. Yeah,
That makes
it's
sense.
Jackson and
So
to
wait,
Cap.
was her dad not there the whole entire time?
No, he was there, but he would go off. He would still go off and
And
like
hunt.
hunt or
Okay.
go off
Yeah.
and do whatever it is he's doing.
God.
And but he heard all of the kind of scuttlebutt from
Right.
other people, and they were like, well, how long's it been since we've seen a soldier? And they'd realized it's been quite a while. And he's
Right.
like, it's true, they're really not looking for us anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So they go back to their hut, and this is where our story gets faster because I started running out of time. So but you know, it's more of a just time passes thing. You know, her siblings start getting married, but she doesn't. You know, her all kinds of crazy shit. Like her father gets framed for a murder. They have to move
Oh
to
my
Georgia
God.
because her father gets framed for a murder. Her mother dies. She gets engaged to a shopkeeper's son, finally, who she really hardly talks to. She goes on little fishing trips with, but they're just cutely, you know, demure with each other. But he goes off to fight in the Civil War and gets killed before they can get married. And her father goes off to fight in the Civil War and gets killed.
Oh, he could fight still. What, the
Mhm.
1860, what, 2?
Yeah.
3? What year was the Civil War? 2.
That sounds right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
63, 64.
Mhm. So her father also dies in the war. And at that time, you know, when they're in Georgia, they're not that far from Atlanta. And she says there's a comment that she makes about how strange it is because one of the jobs that she had while they were living there was to go collect goods from different merchants and take them back and forth to places and drive a wagon. And she would go into Atlanta, and it was strange because you would go into Atlanta and there would only be women and children. There's like no men anywhere in the entire city. And I was like, man, I've never heard anybody say it quite like that.
Yeah.
But that's pretty real, you know. So they've lost all of the patriarchs of the family at this point, and the parents and everything. Casey passes away not too long after this, but Casey's still there.
The
mother
second
mother
mom.
number 2.
Mm-hmm.
But she tells Nancy tells the story when she's the head of the family that they go back to the hut in Buck's Pocket, this is actually at the house in Georgia, and she sends her younger siblings into the house because she hears soldiers coming, you know, cavalry. And this man comes riding up in this fancy hat and uniform on like charging her on his horse, and just isn't going to stop. Like he's waiting for her to get out of the way. And she is standing in front of her cornfield on the land that they have and they farm on. And finally the horse rears up to a stop because she didn't move. And she said it was General Sherman who had come up. And I don't know if this is true, but it's a good story. He had come up, you know, they were, you know, because they were outside of Atlanta. So they were there to conscript, you know, goods for the soldiers. And he's like, well, I'm going to need that corn of yours. And I would like to ask you for your corn so I can feed my soldiers. And she looks up and she says, no, sir, I won't. And he's like, I could take this from you if I want. And she's like, you look over there. I've got more mouths to feed than you do.
Oh, wow.
And he looks over at the cabin and sees these, like all these little eyes peering out because there's 18 other children in this family.
Oh, my God.
And while they're standing there, like having this face off, she says, this rattlesnake comes out of the corn stalks near her feet. And he sees it and he shoots, but he misses. And because of the sound of the recoil, the snake bites her on the ankle. And she doesn't flinch and she doesn't look and she doesn't move. And she said, General Sherman looks at her and he shoots the snake after that in the head. He kills the snake and he looks down and he's like, okay. And he turns around and he's like, we'll find food somewhere else. And of course she has to recover from a snake bite. She tells a couple different times the ways that they do that with like tobacco leaves and stuff like we've talked about.
Right.
But so years and years and years pass. She goes through a series of these jobs of hauling things back and forth. And she gets to where she is very, very old. And, you know, all of her little brothers and sisters have gotten married. And, you know, her final employer who she lived with to clean his house and everything has passed away. And so she asks her brother, John, if she can go live with him up in the old hut at Buck's Pocket. So she moves back to her childhood home and he says, of course you can. And then one day she's there and a man named Nelson Dollar shows up at the house and he's talking to John, her brother. And John, he's an old white man. And John turns around and waves at Nancy in the fields and she comes up and he said, this is Nelson Dollar and his wife died last year and he needs a woman to help him on his farm. And she says, I ain't looking for a job.
Mhm.
And Nelson looks at her and said, I'm not looking to hire you. I'm looking to marry you. And they
Which
just
is
stand
basically
there.
the same thing.
I know,
except he
right?
doesn't
I
have to
know,
pay her.
right? No shit. And they just stand there kind of awkwardly looking at each other. And then she says, I am 79 years old.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
What year is this? 79. She's
1995.
It would be in the 1910 maybe.
95. Yeah.
And he just nods. And she says,
1904.
well, okay.
Ah!
Shit.
And she just walks in the house and grabs her shit and gets in his wagon, and they go off to the justice of the peace and get married. And he takes her home to her place in Valley Head is the name of his town. And
know where Valley
it's
Head
it's his big farm. And they have 10 to 15 lovely years.
I thought you were going to say children. I was like, oh my God.
She was just as fertile as her mother's were.
God.
No, she had no children.
Wow.
You know, she worked. She
Yeah.
gets her a dog that everybody hates, that, you know, that will not even look at anyone but her. And you know, they really do. She lives on a farm, so there's not like a neighborhood right around her, but whenever they go into town and sit and do things, the children just start to call her Granny. And so she gets this nickname Granny Dollar. And she has this old pocket knife that her father gave her on her, I believe it was on her brother's wedding. Her first brother who got married, her father bought her a knife. And she still has this knife from when her brother first got married, and she'll run it along people's palms, run the knife point around people's palms to tell them their fortune. She'll point out their lines with the pocket knife. And so she gets kind of a reputation, and she's also obviously just a character.
Right.
And so a drought comes eventually, though, and the farm stops paying because there's a drought, and Nelson can't pay the mortgage for the first time ever. And so they find this rental house, and he's apologizing. She's just like, we're gonna make do. And they move into this empty rental up on Lookout Mountain. And not that long after that, Nelson passes away. He's
Because
sick
Valley
for a
Head's
while.
near Mentone, by the way. It's like
Okay,
right
so
next to it.
okay, so it might have been So when Nelson dies, you know, they've gotten to where she's only got the money left that she'd saved for his tombstone. She paid $28 for his tombstone. She'd saved it special for it. And now she's alone in the house with Buster, the dog, and she doesn't like the house. She's renting from a family that, you know how this happens when I don't know if this ever happened when you rented, but all of a sudden the family who rents to you is like, hey, my son just got married and really needs this house, so you got 2
Yes.
weeks to get out.
I've had that happen in college.
So they did this to this old woman,
Lord.
and she's got nowhere else to go. And they evict her. And it's 1923 at this point.
Oh my God.
She is
98.
She is nearly 100 years old.
Shame on them.
And she has nowhere to go. And she's just kind of like, well, I mean, and you get the impression from reading her descriptions of this that she really was just like, well,
I mean, she's survived this long.
I know.
From all that, this seems kind of just like a little blip.
Certainly. So she picks up Buster and tells him to follow along, and she just starts to walk down the street.
Where's
And
the rest of her 18 siblings?
They've all married and gone to their. Some
they're
of them have
probably
died.
dead.
I was
Yeah,
like, several
a lot
of them
have. But
So several miles down the road, she comes upon this group of boys playing in a field or playing baseball or something. And she starts talking to them, and they're asking her who she is, and they're asking her all these questions, and they just seem really fascinated with her. So she starts having this long conversation with them, and come to find out it's this school. They're at this boarding school, and it's called the Master School. It's a prep school near Little River Canyon.
what? It's a prep
It didn't
school.
stay open for that
I was
long.
like, there's a prep
this
school.
this was the 20s, and at this
in
point
DeKalb County.
the headmaster is gone right now. His name was Colonel Howard, and he's gone right now because they're already running out of money in 1923, and he's going to look for donors. And you know, of course, this means he's going to come up on the Depression before too long. So this school is not around for ages and
Yeah.
ages, so you probably wouldn't recognize it. But it's near Little River Canyon. And the boys are like, well, where do you live? And we'd like to come visit you. And she's just like, well, I don't live anywhere right now. I'm just walking down the road. And they're like, well, we've got a house over here. So the headmaster's not home, and apparently nobody's watching these children. And they run off, and there's this empty house on the property, and they start setting it up for her.
Oh.
And they just like, they find her everything she needs, and they set her up, and they say, well, you can stay here. And they come and visit her every day. And then one of them eventually says, well, when headmaster gets back, it might be, I don't know what he's going to think about this. So Colonel Howard comes back one day, and she gives him not even time to really sit down. Like the second he gets back in his office, she shows up at his office and just walks in and says, Colonel Howard, I'm Granny Dollar. And she says, I'm an engine, and we engines don't want to fool nobody, so I got some questions to ask you before I live here with y'all for the rest of my life. And
my gosh.
she asks him if she can keep her chickens. She asks if she's allowed to smoke, because she knows the boys aren't allowed to smoke, but she keeps this pipe on her all the time, and she loves it, and she just wants to smoke.
I'm sorry. Was she walking down the street with her chickens?
Yeah, the chickens probably followed her all the way down the road.
Chickens and her dog.
And her dog.
Oh my God.
And she wants to know if she can call Colonel Paw, because he reminds her of her paw. And she wants to know if she can keep her dog Buster, because even though he's mean to everybody else, she likes him in her life and she wants him there. And she asks if he can please tell the lady at school not to ask her to pray, because she conjures, and those that conjure don't pray. But she says Indian conjures are just like white people praying, but that lady don't know this. And then she says, also, I really love your rocking chair, and I have never seen anything so grand, and I would really like one. So can I take that with me back to my cottage? And he cannot damn say no to a single thing she asks him to do, because she's
like
just that
100.
I know, and she's just so energetic and charming, and nobody could ever say no to her. So she stayed at the master school. She stays in this little house and in this area until she dies. And all that time, and they believe she might have been 108 years old
Oh my God.
when she passed away.
1965?
I know, right? And so it would have been around 30, I think, maybe 1930. And everybody in town had grown to know her. And when she died, people put up money she had saved back money for her own tombstone, but somebody had come and had looted her house after she died and taken her money. So that the town put together the $28 for her tombstone. And the town put together all the money for her casket even. They bought a casket for her. And she had asked in advance these three local white farmer men to dance a Cherokee funeral dance for her. And she had taught them she had taught them how it sounded, and she taught them what to do. And sounds like they look like chickens with their head cut off, but these three men danced that dance with everything in them, they said, when she died in her house. And so the colonel and everybody else talked about her so much because she was just such a cool character, and they just couldn't help but write about her. So there are articles and things like that in the little small local magazines and newspapers and things. And the Birmingham News did get one of them. I think Colonel Howard wrote an article about her in the Birmingham News. But just people couldn't help but tell stories about her.
Oh, wow.
And, it sounds like you don't really hear them anymore, but it sounds like she was
my
worth
mother
talking
knows.
about.
She sent me a message.
She does know.
She said there was a small book written about her, and I think she wrote a book. The ones I saw had a soft cover, not from a big publisher. I may have used to have one of the books, but I'm sure it's been given away or thrown away. That's a snap at me, by the way.
That's really funny. I was like, there's no way she would have done that on her own.
Granny was a big deal. I think she lived in Henniger on Lookout Mountain, Henniger Valley Head, Arkansas. Yeah. Not sure, though. DeKalb used to have an active historical society. After Ruth's husband died, someone my mom used to work more, it is no more. These books are probably in the DeKalb library. I think Granny lived to be 100 or close to it. That's what Mom knows about her. When you said she lived that long, and because my mom's parents were born in the 20s, so they would have known.
So they had heard those stories, probably. And there are a couple of books, and all of the stuff that I got is from one of them, but for some reason my Kindle Cloud Reader isn't working right now, so I may not be able to tell you the author, but it is, it's by Neil Wooten, and it is just called Granny Dollar, and there's a picture, you guys can see, but y'all friends on the internet radio can't. I don't know if you can see in that one that it's a picture of her. It's a picture of her with that nasty ass dog Buster, who actually after she died, they didn't know what to do with it. He was 20 years old.
Oh my gosh.
When she died.
Oh my God.
And he had no teeth. and he was mean as he had ever been. And he, like, when she died, and of course they cleaned out the house and closed it up, and you could only just find him sitting there gnawing on the door jamb with no teeth because he wouldn't be put out of the house.
Yeah.
And they did have to euthanize him eventually,
Yeah.
but they gave him a funeral service.
Oh wow.
So
Oh.
so I don't know. I mean, I don't usually go for heartwarming stuff, but she just sounded like a piece of work, and I was like, shit, I wish I could be like that.
I know, and I love the story about the boys just saying like, "Come here and
Yeah.
live with us." The only schools I know up there, it's called Moon Lake. That's the school, and I don't know that it's.
That sounds like a horror movie.
I know. Ruhama
There's
is
always a lake.
Ruhama is another one that's near there, but I think it's more south. But Moon Lake was all I think they only have like it's elementary school now or middle. I don't think they have a high school, but I can imagine it being in that area, which is again near Mentone, somewhere up there. If she had left. Well, Valley Head's in the valley. When you're standing on the mountain on the cliffs of Mentone, you look down. That's what you see. It's Valley Head.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, just having gone to these places, and if y'all have
bluff.
gone in your areas to like one of the taller bluffs, I mean, it's Appalachia. We all have some sort of mountain range around us. But I mean, if you've ever driven up to one of those places and look out over the valleys around you, and then try and imagine like having walked there. Like, that's the type of thing that always just blows my mind. And when I talked about Chimney Rock, it was just the same idea. It's like, think about when there weren't these roads.
Right.
You know, I mean, think about like how much it took for a person to fucking walk down this road several miles from the house they got evicted from when they were 100 years old and not be just like lying down dead on the side of the road,
Well, that's
just
probably
out of
why
will.
they were 100 years old, because they were in such great shape.
So anyway, so that's my story about Granny Dollar, because I just thought
Nice.
that was a cool story. And that's all I got to say.
Awesome. Thanks so much for listening, everyone.
Thank you guys.
We'll
Bye, y'all.
talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.
It's good, isn't it? And
Well,
it's strong. It's 2 ounces.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about that.
It's
Once you
very
said that it was
strong.
all like Irish cream, I was like, oh shit, this has more alcohol in it than I thought it did. And I just literally like
yeah, yours is
pounded
almost
it.
gone.
Hers is gone.
Luckily, that was the last of the cinnamon apple vodka. So you're gonna have to
Oh
figure
god,
out
I
the rest
can't
for
live
yourself.
without that. I could live without them apples, but the vodka, that may need to be the new thing you do for people for Christmas.
I'm going to. I'm definitely doing the apple cinnamon for this year because
it's
it was so
amazing.
easy.
it's
And
amazing.
it's so good.
I want it. All right, so with this new format,
Tell us a
I'm
story.
going today, and it's only me.
How do you feel, Patrice? How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great.
What are you usually thinking when she goes first?
Oh, I love it.
You like it when she goes first? But
Yeah.
sometimes you're like, oh no, I drink too much.
No, she
That's
told
just-
me she didn't worry about.
I
Like,
don't-
I'd sometimes sit there and
You
I'm like,
worry. I
I
knew
worry.
what you
worry.
did.
I don't worry.
Okay, I knew somebody
Shit,
had
I
told
worry
me.
about everything.
I knew somebody had told me when they don't go first. They're like,
I enjoy it. I'm like kind of breathing when I don't have to go first. And I get to enjoy my drink. I mean,
It's your zen
she's
time.
It's
living
my
in the
zen.
moment.
I'm
I
living
like
in
it.
the moment.
I
yes.
love that. Well, now you can have an entire
yeah.
I
an entire
know.
episode of living in the moment. I'm
I
digging
love
it.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna keep living in the moment.
Well, I did have to put this together as, hey, remind me for after talk that I could talk about the birthday cake thing too.
Birthday cake.
If you want after talk,
Birthday
by the way,
cake.
you
Oh,
can
yeah.
always join our Patreon. And
Yeah.
you can hear about said birthday cake and all the shenanigans surrounding it.
Absolutely.
Um,
And there's a discount at our store that's currently not up, but it will be.
Yes. So take that out because I'm sure it'll be fine by the time.
Randy.
Actually, regardless of whether our like official store is up or not, you've got some designs in the store that's linked from the site that
Yes.
haven't been up before, and they're
Right.
fun new designs that Patrice
Oh.
has made that you would be missing out on if you didn't
Cat
check
cult?
it out.
Cat cult.
Cat
It's
Cult is
there?
up there.
Mhm.
Oh shit! Nobody
Yeah.
told me.
Well,
I
it
need
just
I
like just in the
forgot.
last couple. Patrice is all like, "I forgot I designed this thing," and I'm like, "You know what? I do something cool, and I talk about it like
Me
for like
too.
weeks at a time, you know." And she's just like, "Oh, I just like toss this off in 2 seconds," and I just kind of didn't even remember I did it. And I'm like,
Excuse
"Fuck
me.
you,
I'm gonna need to get to that site. I need
fuck
that.
you, talented people." So anyway,
Thank you.
that got a little aggressive, but I meant it as a compliment. So anyway,
They're trying to poison me and be aggressive at me.
It's because
We're
you're
gonna
not
ruin-
going this
we're
week.
trying to ruin your Zen time.
I am good.
Okay,
It's
well-
positive energy.
So I had to finish this while like I was sitting with family coming in for one of my children's family birthday celebrations today with cake and everything, and so it might be a little slapdash, but that's okay
I
because that's
think
the way we used to roll.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think it'll be brilliant.